My dad sold the house I inherited and said, "The money will go to pay off your brother's vacation." I laughed, and a week later, when my lawyer called him, I honestly thought my father was joking when he said, "That money will go to your brother's vacation," after selling the house I inherited. I even laughed. But a week later, when my lawyer called him, the laughter was gone. That house meant everything to me. It wasn't just some property in Grandma's will, it was where I spent most of my childhood, where I felt safe when things got bad with my parents. Grandma was the only one in the family who really cared about me. She practically raised me. While my parents were too busy with their own lives and too focused on my younger brother Adam, she was the one who showed up for me. She made me feel like I mattered. And when she died, she left me her house. I wasn't surprised. My parents rarely visited her. They never lifted a finger to help when she was sick. Adam, her golden child, never cared either. He was too busy doing nothing, 24 years old, still living at home, unemployed, yet somehow full of potential in my father's eyes. I had long accepted that I was the forgotten son, the one who had to make it on his own. But I never thought it would come to this. One afternoon I decided to stop by the house, just to check on it. I hadn't moved in yet, I had my own place, but I liked knowing it was there, waiting for me. But as I pulled into the driveway, something was wrong. There were cars out front. Not mine. Not Grandma's. Someone else's. I walked up the steps and rang the doorbell. A few seconds later, a man in his late 30s answered the door, with a woman standing behind him. They looked confused. "Can I help you?" the man asked. I frowned. "Yes. This is my house. Who are you?" The woman let out a small, nervous laugh. We bought this house last month. From the owner." I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. "You what?" The man crossed his arms. "We bought it. Fair and square. What's the problem?" My mouth went dry. I stared at them, at their cars, at the porch that wasn't mine anymore, and I could barely process it. I pulled out my phone, checked my emails, my texts, nothing. No alerts. No notifications of a sale. But I already knew what had happened. I didn't say another word to them. I just turned around, got in my car, and drove straight to my parents' house. Adam was the only one home, sprawled out on the couch, scrolling through his phone. He barely looked up as I walked in. "What's up?" he muttered. I took a deep breath and tried to stay calm. "Where's Mom and Dad?" He shrugged. "Out." "Why?" I clenched my fists. "Because they sold my house." Adam blinked. "Oh. That." He nodded, as if it were just a casual piece of information. "Yeah, they'll be back soon." Then he went back to scrolling. I stood there for a whole minute, staring at him. He didn't care. Not at all. So I waited. When my parents finally walked through the door, I didn't even let them sit down. "What the hell did you do?" My father sighed, as if I was the one being difficult. "Look, Hubert, it was unfair that you got the house. Your mother and I had other plans." "Plans?" I repeated. "So you forged documents and sold my house?" Adam needed a vacation. My father continued, completely unfazed. "He's been stressed. And he needs a car. He's the one with potential, Hubert." I almost laughed again, but this time it wasn't funny. I shook my head. "I'm not letting this go." Then I turned and walked out the door. Because my dad had no idea what was coming next. I barely remember driving home. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles were white. I could still hear my father's voice in my head, calm and dismissive, like he hadn't just stolen from me. Like it was no big deal. Adam needed a vacation. I couldn't wrap my head around it. He needed a vacation? He needed a car? Meanwhile, my grandmother's house, the only real home I ever had, was gone. I parked in front of my apartment and sat there for a while, trying to think. I wasn't going to let this go, but I wasn't going to rush in without a plan. My father was arrogant, but he wasn't stupid. If he was going to pull this off, He had to cover his tracks. So I called my friend Daniel. Daniel was a lawyer, and he wasn't just good at his job, he was ruthless. If there was even a hint of fraud in the sale, he'd find it. I explained everything over the phone, and by the time I was done, he was pissed. "Meet me at my office tomorrow," he said. "Bring everything you have, emails, documents, texts. I don't care if it's a birthday card from your grandmother. If it mentions the house, I want it." I didn't sleep much that night. My mind kept replaying everything. Grandma's voice, my father's smirk, Adam's indifference. And underneath it all, a single thought: they think they've won. They had no idea what was about to happen. The next morning, I met Daniel in his office. I handed him every document I had: my grandmother's will, bank statements, even old text messages in which she talked about how much she wanted me to have the house. He studied them for a while, then leaned back in his chair. "Your dad's an idiot," he finally said. I raised an eyebrow. "Why?" "Because he didn't just commit fraud, he left a paper trail." Daniel turned his monitor over and showed me something I wasn't expecting. A forged signature. My signature. I leaned closer. "Wait, this isn't mine." "No shit," Daniel muttered. "Your father forged your consent to the sale. And get this, he used a notary who's already been investigated for shady dealings. This is bad for him. Really bad." I exhaled slowly. "So what's the move?" Daniel cracked his knuckles. "First, we hit them with a formal demand. Give them a chance to pay back the money before we take them to court. But considering what you told me about your father, I doubt he'll cooperate." "Not a chance," I said. "Then we sue. And if he can't pay, we go after his assets. His house, his savings, everything." I nodded, feeling something I hadn't felt in days: satisfaction. "Let's do it." A week later, Daniel sent my father the formal demand. He had 48 hours to return the $200,000 from the sale, or we would take legal action. The next day, my phone rang. It was my father. For a second, I almost didn't answer it. Then I thought, no. Let's see what he has to say now. I picked it up. "Hubert." My father's voice was calm, but there was something underneath it. Something I hadn't heard before. Panic. "I got a letter from a lawyer," he said. "You're being ridiculous." I remained silent, letting him ramble. "This is a family matter. You don't take the family to court. You don't ruin your father's life for money." I finally spoke. "You didn't just take money. You stole from me. You forged my signature. That's fraud. You're looking at jail time." There was a long pause. Then he sighed. "Listen. I'll give you back some of the money. Not all of it, but dash." I laughed. "You can't negotiate." "I'll talk to Adam," he pressed. "Maybe we can work something out." I froze at the mention of Adam. Then, suddenly, something clicked. I never told him I knew about the scam. Not directly. I never mentioned the forged signature, the crooked notary, none of it. I just said he stole from me. Which meant, he already knew. He got caught and he knew. And if he knew about the forgery, that meant Adam probably knew too. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. "Did Adam know about this?" My father hesitated. Too long. Then he hung up. And suddenly I realized this wasn't just my father's betrayal. It was Adam's too. I stared at my phone, my father's name still on the screen. He had hung up the second I mentioned Adam. That told me all I needed to know. Adam wasn't just some clueless bystander in all of this. He knew. Maybe he had known all along. And suddenly, his reaction that day, the way he barely blinked when I told him our parents had sold my house, made perfect sense. This wasn't just my father's betrayal. It was his too. And I needed to hear him admit it. That night, I drove back to my parents' house. My mother opened the door and looked surprised. "Hubert? What are you doing here?" I ignored her and went inside. Adam was right where I expected him, on the couch, scrolling through his phone, looking like he didn't have a care in the world. I stood in front of him. How long have you known? Adam barely looked up. Known what? I clenched my fists. That Dad forged my signature. That got his attention. His fingers twitched, and his eyes flicked to mine. I don't know what you're talking about. Liar. I took a step closer. Don't play dumb. I know you knew. I just want to hear you say it. My mother sighed. Hubert, stop it. We're a family dash. I cut her off. Family doesn't do this. Family doesn't steal from each other. Adam's expression wavered. He opened his mouth, closed it, then exhaled sharply. All right, fine. Yeah, I knew that. My stomach tightened, but my face remained blank. For how long? He looked away. Dad told me before he sold it. He said it wasn't a big deal, that you already had your own place, and that you needed a vacation more than I needed my own inheritance? Adam frowned. I didn't take the money. Oh, really? I crossed my arms. So who booked the trip to the Maldives? Silence. I shook my head. And the car Dad wanted to buy you? Adam's face turned red. I didn't ask him to. He just dash. I scoffed. Oh, right. You just conveniently accepted the vacation and the car, but had no idea where the money came from? Adam looked away. It's not like you needed the house anyway. I actually laughed. Not like I needed it? It wasn't about need, Adam. It was mine. Grandma left it to me. But you and Dad decided that didn't matter because you wanted something instead. I turned toward the door. I'm done here. Adam jumped off the couch. Wait, what are you going to do? I looked over my shoulder at him. You'll see. Then I walked out. That night I called Daniel. We don't just want the money back. I told him. I want everything we can take. If they can't pay, I want their house. I want their life savings. I want my father on trial for fraud. We will go all the way. Daniel didn't even hesitate. Let's do it. My father and Adam thought this was just about a house. They had no idea they had just burned their own lives to the ground. The moment my father was served with the lawsuit, the calls began. At first he was furious. You're being ridiculous, Hubert. This is a family business. You don't take your own father to court. Then he tried guilt. I did what I thought was right. Adam needed help. You're really going to send me to jail for a house? Finally, he tried bargaining. Fine. I'll give you back some of the money. Not all of it, but dash. I cut him off. You can't negotiate. He tried one last time. His voice was lower, almost desperate. You'd really do this to me? You did it to yourself, I said. Then I hung up. The process went quickly. Faster than I had expected. Daniel wasn't just good, he was relentless. Every time my father's lawyer tried to delay or make pointless motions, Daniel shut them down immediately. He was ready for anything. And Adam? He never called. Never texted. Didn't even show up at my apartment to bitch. He was silent. I had the feeling he was waiting. Waiting to see if Dad would come out of this. Waiting to see if he'd have to choose a side. Then came the trial. My father sat at the defendant's table, wearing a suit that looked too big on him, his face tense with stress. He wasn't the confident, arrogant man I grew up with. He looked small. I was the first to take the stand. I told the jury about my grandmother, how much she meant to me, how she raised me when my parents didn't care. I told them how she left me the house in her will. How I found out it had been sold when I showed up one day and found strangers living there. Then Daniel laid out the hard evidence. My grandmother's will, proving that the house was legally mine. The forged signature on the sale papers. The corrupt notary who had signed it, a guy already under investigation for fraud. Bank statements showing where the money from the sale went. Adam's vacation in the Maldives. A down payment on the car my father wanted to buy him. It was an open and shut case. But my father's lawyer kept trying. He painted me as an ungrateful son. Said I was blowing a family misunderstanding out of proportion. That my father was only doing what was best for the family. That I was tearing us apart for money. The jury didn't buy it. The judge didn't buy it. And when the verdict was read guilty on all counts, I saw my father's face fall in real fear. The sentencing came a few weeks later. 5 years in prison. The moment the judge said it, my mother let out a choked sob. Adam just sat there, his face pale. My father? He turned in his seat and looked at me. His eyes were filled with pure hatred. But I didn't flinch. I had nothing more to say to him. Outside the courthouse, my mother caught up with me. How could you do this? She snapped, her voice shaking with anger. I turned to face her. How could I? He stole from me. He forged my signature. That's a crime, Mom. Her face twisted. He's your father. I almost laughed. Did that matter when he was cheating on me? She shook her head. You're not my son anymore. And for a second, just a second, it stung. Then I realized she was never really my mother to begin with. All she ever cared about was Adam. Speaking of Adam, he came up next. He didn't look angry. Just tired. Are you happy now? He murmured. I raised an eyebrow. You got a free vacation with stolen money. Why don't you tell me? Adam didn't say anything. I sighed. You knew. You knew all along. Adam looked away. It wasn't my idea. It doesn't matter, I said. You took the leave anyway. You still let it happen. Adam took a long breath. Well, congrats, man. You won. No, I said. I took back what was mine. Adam didn't answer. He just shook his head and walked away. And that was the last time we ever spoke. A month later, my dad went to jail. My mother and Adam had to move out of their house, the house I was suing for. They stayed with my aunt for a while, but even she got tired of them. Finally, they had no choice but to move into a tiny rented apartment. I used the money I won in the lawsuit to buy back my grandmother's house. The house they had stolen from me was mine again. I stepped inside for the first time in months and ran my fingers over the familiar walls. It felt right. And though my mother and Adam would never forgive me, I didn't care. They made their choices. And I made mine. After the trial, my mother and Adam didn't just hate me, they made sure everyone knew it. They cut off all contact, but that didn't stop them from spreading their version of the story. My mother called every relative she could, painting me as the villainous son who threw his own father in prison and left his family homeless. She destroyed my name. I told Daniel when he updated me about the final settlement. She tried, he corrected. But it didn't work, did it? And he was right. Because no one was buying it. At first, some of our extended family were shocked. A few aunts and uncles reached out, hesitant, trying to piece together what really happened. Hubert, did you really put your dad in prison? One of my cousins asked. I was blunt. He forged my signature, stole my house, and used the money for Adam's vacation. What was I supposed to do? Let it go. Silence. Then she sighed. Yeah, no. I wouldn't have let that go either. And that's when things shifted. Because everyone loved Grandma. And the more they thought about it, the angrier they got, not at me, but at my parents. Because this wasn't just about me. This was about what they did to Grandma's memory. She left that house to me because she wanted me to have it. And instead of respecting that, my father threw it away like it meant nothing. That didn't sit right with anyone. Meanwhile, my mother and Adam were dealing with their own problems. Without my father's income, they couldn't afford their mortgage. The court had already seized my father's assets, and after the settlement, there wasn't much left. They had no choice but to move in with my aunt, Linda. Aunt Linda was kind, the kind of person who would never let family go homeless, even if she didn't agree with them. But she didn't support them. She made that very clear. She told them straight up. I'm letting you stay here because I have a heart. But don't expect me to defend what you did. My mother was furious. You're taking his side? Aunt Linda didn't back down. I'm taking Grandma's side. That shut my mother up real quick. A few months later, they finally moved into a small rented apartment. It wasn't anything fancy, just a 2-bedroom place in an older part of town. A huge downgrade from the house they once had. And Adam? He finally had to grow up. No more vacations. No new car. Just the reality of being a 25-year-old man with no job, no degree, and no one to clean up his messes anymore. I don't know if he ever blamed my father for putting him in that situation. But I do know that he never blamed himself. As for me, I moved into Grandma's house. The first night I slept there, it felt right. I sat in the living room, running my fingers over the old wooden coffee table. It still had the scratches from when I was a kid, playing with my toy cars. I could almost hear Grandma's voice, soft, warm, telling me stories before bed. I won. Not just the lawsuit. Not just the trial. I took back what was stolen. And even though my mother and Adam would never forgive me, I didn't care. Because deep down, I knew Grandma would have been proud. And that was all that mattered. It's been a year since everything went down. My father has been in prison for a while now, my mother and Adam are still living in that tiny apartment, and I've been settling into Grandma's house. I didn't expect to hear from any of them again. But then, a few weeks ago, I got a call. From my mother. At first, I thought she dialed me by accident. But when I answered, she sighed and said, "Your father wants to see you." Apparently, he had been asking her for months to reach out to me, but she refused until now. I don't know why she finally gave in. Maybe she was tired of hearing it. Maybe she thought I'd say no, and she just wanted to prove a point. But I agreed. Not because I missed him. Not because I wanted to fix anything. I just wanted to hear what he had to say. Visiting him was weird. I expected him to be angry, bitter, the way he was in court. But he looked tired. Older. Like the weight of everything had finally caught up to him. The first thing he said when he sat down across from me was, "I messed up." And then, for the first time in my life, my father apologized. Not just some half-hearted, "I'm sorry you felt that way" kind of thing. A real apology. He admitted everything. How selfish he was, how he shouldn't have taken the house, how he let his favoritism toward Adam blind him. "I thought I was doing the right thing," he said. "But I was just being a fool." I sat there for a long time, just letting him talk. And in the end, when he finally asked, "Can you forgive me?" I did. Not for him. For me. Because holding on to that anger was exhausting. And whether I forgave him or not, it wouldn't change what happened. It wouldn't bring back the time lost, or fix my relationship with my mother and brother. But at least this way, I didn't have to carry that weight anymore. I told him, "I forgive you. But that doesn't mean we can go back to how things were." He nodded, like he already knew that. After that I left. I haven't visited him again, and I don't know if I will. As for my mother and Adam, nothing has changed. My mother still refuses to speak to me, and honestly, I don't care to fix it. Adam acts like I don't exist, which is fine by me. Some relationships aren't meant to be repaired. But at least I got back what truly mattered. And that's enough.